Mark Charles. Hey, Mark. Thanks for calling. Thanks for joining us. Of course, this is Mark Charles who just came in. Yeah, you and Mark.
If you want to call in.
Absolutely. If you can send messages here if you want, or you can call in if you want. Yeah. Whatever works. But I know our listeners are very excited to hear from you, Mark.
Yes, as we are.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope it was sounding good.
You don't have earbuds? Okay, Zelda.
You're not Mark Charles.
Oh, all right, Mark.
All right, calling that. There we go.
Charles, it is an absolute honor and a pleasure to speak with you.
Mr. Charles, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you doing this evening?
We're doing well, thank you.
Sorry about the mix-up a little bit, but...
That was on me.
Not a problem. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you well, and hopefully we're not too echoey.
Okay, let me try one more thing. Hold on just a second.
Of course.
Are we echoing?
Is this better?
Oh, yeah, you sound good.
Do we sound good?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
We're not echoey or anything? It sounded, are we echoey or?
Not too bad.
That's good. Oh, man, well, everybody, we'd like for everybody here. He is, we've been saying about how you're an independent U.S. president.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
No,
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so we're very excited about this, and you've said before too. Everybody is talking about it's Trump versus Biden, and both of them seem to be terrible choices for us. What inspired you to run?
Well, before I begin, can I introduce myself quickly?
By all means, we'll follow your lead.
Yeah, so let me just introduce myself traditionally. So, Mark Charles Yunish, Sin Bakedina Enishla, the Tohiklini Bashichin, Sin Bakedina Dashiche, the Todachini Dashinella. In our Navajo culture, when we introduce ourselves, we always give our 4 clans, and we're matrilineals of people with our identities coming from our mother's mother. And so my mother's mother is American of Dutch heritage, and so I say Sin Bakedina. Loosely translated, that means I'm from the wooden shoe people. My second clan, my father's mother, is Tohiglini, which is the waters that flow together. My third clan, my mother's father, is also Sinbakedina. And then my fourth clan, my father's father, is Todachitni, and that's the Bitterwater clan. It's one of the original clans of our Navajo people. I also just want to acknowledge I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C., and this is the land of the Piscataway. And so I want to honor the Piscataway. They are the nation that they lived here, they hunted here, they farmed here, they fished here. These were their lands long before Columbus got lost at sea. And I want to acknowledge the host people of the lands where I'm living today, which is in the area of Washington, D.C. So, but yeah, so I'd love to get into this. There are so many ways I could begin how I started my campaign. Probably one of the more recent ways I would introduce it is I was watching President Obama give his final State of the Union address in 2016. And he was acknowledging the divisiveness that had been occurring during his 8 years in office, and he was advocating that our nation needed a new politics. And in his State of the Union, he referenced the Constitution. He said, "We the people." Our Constitution begins with these 3 simple words. These are words we've come to recognize mean all the people. Now, he got a lot of applause for that line, and there's a lot of warm reception for that. A lot of people want to believe that America is a place where we the people means all the people. But I've studied our history. I've written a book on the doctrine of discovery. I've blogged, I've written, I've researched, and I know our history. I know the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, had no intention of we the people meaning all the people. I've studied the life of Abraham Lincoln. I've looked at his policies, not only his white supremacist policies of institutionalizing white supremacy and constitutionally protecting slavery, but even his genocidal policies of removing the natives from Minnesota, Colorado, and New Mexico to make way for the Transcontinental Railway. And I knew Abraham Lincoln did not believe we the people meant all the people.
Yeah,
I've studied the Civil Rights Movement. And I've studied the Civil Rights Movement, and I knew as good as that was, it didn't get us to we the people meaning all the people. And President Trump does not believe we the people means all the people.
Well, he means we the people mean
And so
race.
when he said those words, President Obama, I asked myself, I said, when did we decide we the people meant all the people? That's the challenge we have as a nation, and this is why I'm running, is because our nation has never decided it wants to be a place where we the people includes everybody, and so I'm calling the question.
Okay.
Very good.
Now, you mentioned doctrine of discovery. Can you educate us on what that means?
Yeah, so the Doctrine of Discovery, it's a series of papal bulls, edicts of the Catholic Church, written between 1452 and 1493. It's essentially the church in Europe saying to the nations of Europe, wherever you go, whatever land you find not ruled by white European Christian rulers, those people are less than human and their land is yours to take.
Okay.
So this is the doctrine that allowed European nations to colonize Africa because they didn't believe the people there to be human. It's the same doctrine that let Columbus, who was lost at sea, land in this new world, which was already inhabited by millions, and claim to have discovered it. If you think about it, you cannot discover lands already inhabited.
Yeah.
You can steal those lands, you can conquer them, you can colonize them. You can't discover them. So because our history books, our monuments, our proclamations identify Columbus as the discoverer of America, it reveals the bias of the nation, which is that Native peoples, people of color, aren't fully human.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that even
That's the doctrine
that still
that influences the foundations of the nation.
Even today.
that still carries over today with what I could say is like when you're on probation, how it's like, well, you have community service. Well, technically, and Jolynn was reading your book, and it showed that technically slavery still is legal or hasn't never been abolished. It's just been like with the NYPD saying they slashed $1 billion of their budget. They didn't. They just shifted it. They cut half of it was overtime. Well, that's not the budget. It's not overtime. There's no such thing as overtime. Get rid of that altogether. Well, no, that's what they mostly cut, but they still didn't cut all that even. So it's like, so they're just going to call it something else. It's, we as a people are starting to get sick of that.
So,
And Biden's no answer to Trump because Biden had 47 years in office to even try to fix stuff.
And actually put more racist policies in the
So
law.
those two are not the answer. So I always tell people, it's like, well, if you vote for Mark Charles, it's a two-party system. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be. And what's the worst going to happen if I put my vote at Mark Charles? I didn't vote last year or the year before, but if I vote for Mark Charles this year, what's going to happen? You know what? I know what's going to happen if I vote for those two other idiots. Mark Charles, at least it's, we're going to have a good shot at some change. That's going to amount to something.
So the difference between the two parties, if you look at the two parties, and you see it very clearly in 2016, you see it very clearly this year between Trump and Biden. In 2016, let's just go back to there, where Donald Trump was campaigning to make America great again. And the Democrats' response was America's great already.
Yeah.
So they both agreed our past, our history, our foundations were great. They disagreed if we were great in 2016. Donald said no. Hillary said yes.
It's great if you're white. You're white.
See, they were the difference between the two. It wasn't a difference of racism versus anti-racism or equality versus inequality. It was a difference between explicit versus implicit. So Donald wanted to make our nation explicitly white supremacist, racist, and sexist again, and the Democrats wanted to keep our white supremacy and racism implicit.
Right.
That was the difference. And this the same distinction this year between Trump and Biden, where neither one of them are interested in addressing the foundation. So right now, we're having a huge debate on institutionalized white supremacy and our police reforms and our criminal justice reforms. Well, the problem is the reason we see these constant killings, even lynchings by our police departments against Black and Native peoples, is because white supremacy has been institutionalized in our policing system. The 13th Amendment doesn't actually abolish slavery. What it says is neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime whereof the party has been duly convicted. It institutionalizes white supremacy and constitutionally protects slavery in our prison system, in our policing
Free labor.
system. And so both Trump and Biden, when they talk about police reform, they're talking about let's banish chokeholds, let's change where we shoot people.
Yeah.
But they're not talking about making a foundational level change. I'm the only candidate who has a policy, a platform, a plank in my platform that includes abolishing slavery.
Oh, yeah.
That's where we have to start the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, and change. It's
Yeah.
not.
We have to.
But conversation, I think part of, when we say conversation, like it's basically like AOC, who I'm not a big fan of her, but she does make sense a lot of times, like with the police budget. She's like, no, this is just a shell game. You guys are, don't piss on my, she didn't say this, I'm saying this, but everybody pisses on your leg and tells you it's raining. I know it's not raining. You gotta not change things. You gotta kind of, it's part of the Constitution. It's a liquid thing. It's a moving thing. It's a growing thing, and it's going to change. We can't keep looking back. We're going to have to totally scrap. First Amendment all right, that was the one we have from 2000 or, 1776, 200 years ago, and then this is what morphed into it was this new one. And you really have to start with, basic, start it over again. Keep it the same not the same, but get rid of what we thought people, that we elected got rid of for us.
Well, it's like you were saying, Mark. It's even between Trump and Biden, and it's not just a Trump and Biden issue. They're just two options of it, or two examples of it. The number of basically, for the most part, white people just not getting it. Of course, you have people from other races too.
Yeah, I didn't know that many white people didn't get it. I just thought
it's true. But
I grew up with playing baseball and football with every kind of kid.
But I'm just wondering.
That's all I saw.
The number of people who just clearly don't get it. How do you win them over? Like you've said, within your first 100 days of office, one of the first things you're going to do is actually go through the Constitution and start working on getting all of the racist, the flat out racist,
the drug war,
sexist stuff in there.
The drug war could fund just the end of that. Could fund.
But how do you win over the people who are already part of it who just don't get it?
Who won't let go?
Yeah, or who won't let go? Yeah.
Well, so here's the way we do it. Is my campaign is our strategy is not to win the vote of the white landowning male. It's to decenter the white landowning male. So everything about our political system centers the white landowning male. They're at the center of everything, whether it's finance, whether it's media, whether it's politics. They're at the center of everything. And the Constitution was written to protect white landowning men. That's why we have a Constitution. It specifically excludes natives, it specifically excludes women, and it counts Africans as 3/5 of a person. So back in 1776, that left white men, and it was white men who could vote, landowning men who could vote. So that's why we have a Constitution. And for years, over 100 years, Congress and the White House was predominantly a white landowning male
for a long time.
This is why it's never changed. This is why even when we got rid of chattel slavery, we didn't get rid of it. We just institutionalized it in the criminal justice system. This is why we've never, it was in just last January, the ERA got ratified and Congress still couldn't decide we wanted to actually constitutionally treat women as equal. I mean, it's 2020 and we still can't decide as a nation that we want to treat women as equal. Why? Because Congress is predominantly a white landowning male club.
Yeah, do you think?
And so what I'm trying to do is decenter the white landowning male. I'm not necessarily trying to win their vote. I have a strategy that gets me to the White House in spite of their vote.
Okay.
Because they are not going to support me. They are not going to support the policies I'm advocating for, not because I'm not trying to oppress the white landowning male. I'm trying to decenter them. I'm trying to move them from the center and allow them to join the chorus of voices that are around the margins, the voices of women, the voices of LGBTQS, IA plus 2X, the voices of natives and African Americans and people who are on the margins.
Okay.
And so my strategy is actually how to get to the White House going around the white landowning male, not winning their support, but basically getting there in spite of without their support.
And how did you pick a running mate yet?
Not yet. We are working on that. We probably will have a running mate named before the end of July.
Okay.
We're getting to the point where to get on the ballot or to have write-in access in several states, we need to have a VP named. So we're working on that now. We're vetting a few different people, and hopefully we'll have a decision made in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Which is wonderful. Now, what are your, like Tim had mentioned before, the war on drugs? What is your opinion on that?
Well, if you look back, the war on drugs was declared by Ronald Reagan. And if you look back at the history of opioid addiction and even death by opioid addiction, for back in the 70s and 80s, in the 80s when the war on drugs was declared, it was predominantly people of color, African Americans, natives, and Latinos who were dying from, or Latinx who were dying from opioid addiction or opioid overdoses. In the late 90s, and this is when we had a war on drug and we criminalized drug use. And so we were filling our prisons with people, both Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton were filling our prisons with people who were using drugs. We criminalized drug use. In the late 90s, the rate of white people who were dying from opioid addiction about equaled the number of people of color. And in the early 2000s, the rate of white people dying from opioid addiction skyrocketed and went way higher than the rate of people of color dying from opioid addiction. And those are the years when we began treating drug addiction for what it should have been treated in the first place, which is a public health crisis. That's when we began developing better programs to treat addiction. This is when we were developing life-saving techniques to save people's lives on the streets instead of arresting them and throwing them in jail. And so it took more white people dying for our nation to treat this problem for what it was, which is a public health crisis. When it was only people of color dying, or predominantly people of color dying, that was when we declared a war on drugs and we criminalized drug use. So yeah, this war on drugs is technically it's a war on race, and we just have to get rid of it. It's not a fair system, and it's not meant to actually serve or help people. It's meant as a way to criminalize drug use and ultimately to incarcerate, i.e. enslave people of color.
It's actually, I think, believed too, is a jobs instead of, if when the government, remember the DA, I believe, was originally, it's going to pay for itself, it's going to pay for itself. Well, it never does. The only job it has is to get bigger. But basically what I see is like the dark net and all that stuff. That's true capitalism. When it comes to, of course, child porn, those people should be shot. But, there's no excuse for that. But like drugs, if you have people, if there's that many drug addicts, quote unquote, out there that are slipped, there's so much cocaine being consumed and stuff like that, the numbers, no one would have a job. No, drugs are different reactions for certain people. And I think if you regulate it like tobacco and cigarette and alcohol, I think that's a really good start.
Oh, yeah. Now, one thing I'm wondering, too, you mentioned this in your book.
And Ross Ulbricht should not be in jail. If anything, because allegedly he created Silk Road. But even if he did, he should not be in jail for two life sentences for it. Because since Silk Road's inception, violent crimes here in the United States are down 65%.
There you go.
For drugs, because people just buy them online now. They don't have to go to inner cities to, get shot and everything like that. But anyway, and Edward Snowden, I think, is another hero. We wouldn't know about all this government prying into our private business if it wasn't for him. So what do we do to him? We scare him so much he's living in Russia. I think this nation has drank and breathed a lot of crazy juice.
It's true, and that's something too. You were saying before about how that when it comes down to winning over, like you said, white landowning men,
you're not gonna.
You're probably not going to because they like things the way they are. How do you deal with this added level of crazy that it seems that just about, well, not everybody, it seems like too many people are drinking at this point? How are you able to get your message forth because of that?
Well, this is one of the challenges we're facing is our message has been really muffled by mainstream media and by the two-party system. And so, I've been in the race for a year now. I've been at several forums and different events with some of the major Democratic candidates. I was at 2 Native forums and 1 other forum with almost all of the other candidates who ran in the primary: Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Julian Castro, Kamala Harris. I've been at events with all of them, and yet our campaign got very little coverage because most of the coverage went to covering the Democratic candidates.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I was
And I think that's true.
by the national press of several of these events.
Yeah, and I think people do believe the lie of, a third party will never get elected. Well, I really remember Ross Perot. I voted for Ross Perot. And I knew people, because I had a job with computers, I didn't know people, but I would ask it, and we would always talk about, I voted for Perot. And this was just all over different states, too. So I'm like, well, all these people, and this is before I told them how I voted. They're like, I can't believe Perot didn't win. So I know Perot got a lot of votes. And even if he didn't, it's like, well, you're a spoiler for taking away. I don't give a shit. I've been called a lot worse than a spoiler. You know what? I voted my conscience is what I did. If I vote for Montreal's, I know what I'm going to get with the other 2. If I hit the third button, what's the worst going to happen?
Yeah, it's true.
I know these 2 idiots.
Well,
go ahead.
And this is where my strategy is actually going. Again, it's going around the white landowning male center. And so I started out my campaign by campaigning first and foremost to Native people in reservations around the country. Instead of going to Iowa and New Hampshire, which are 2 predominantly white states here in the country, I went to reservations all around the country. And then we've been reaching out to African American, other communities of color, other marginalized communities. But the 2 demographics that get us into the White House, the first is millennials.
Okay.
Millennials are the largest voting bloc.
And what age range is that?
And they have...
Millennials is what age range?
So the younger millennials are probably about 23 or 24 right now, 22. Okay. And then they go up to about, 35, I think, 40. And so millennials have been screwed economically by the system.
Yes.
Right? They were told, go to college, get a good education, you'll get a good job. Well, they went to college. While they were in there, we changed the rules on them. We jacked up the prices and changed lending. And so they came out of the university with tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And there were no jobs. They're teaching adjunct at some community college for $350 a class. And so they've been screwed by the system. Plus, they're being laden with trillions of dollars of national debt. And so millennials, regardless of race, are drowning in debt, and they're ready for systemic change.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Everyone is.
And the key thing is they don't own anything yet. Their only financial asset is their debt. This is why the 2 parties ignore them.
Which is crazy.
And this is why they are the focal point of my campaign, because they only have debt. They're actually open to changing the system.
And that's what we're pushing.
And so
millennials, it's, and I know it has to be, and even Bernie Sanders was still kind of like, I believed he believed a lot of it, but I also believe he answered to the same people, and that's the oligarchs. Yeah. The oligarchs, they control, if we're living in an oligarchy, Yeah.
Well, it's like you even say in your book about how we in the West tend to just not realize about how much we are of the mindset that we rely on these institutions that are just, most of them at their core are just toxic at this point. That's a lot to get through. But okay, so at the very least,
the process. And as far as money goes, I talk to friends that they do okay, they do real okay. And when I tell them the difference between $1 million and $1 billion, intrinsic wise and real world, is if the day you're born, I give someone $1 million, but they have to spend $1,000 a day. That $1 million is gone in about 3 years, maybe 3.5 years. Okay? Well, that's not going to work out. So how about this? The day you're born, I'll give you $1 billion with the same conditions. You have to spend $1,000 a day every day. That is going to take you 32 lifetimes. That's the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. I know there's a few more zeros, but that's the difference. So when you hear people have 65 billion, like, are you?
Yeah, that's something.
Like, there's no way you can spend it.
One of the things I've said frequently is it's a falsehood. No one can earn $1 billion. In the debates, when Michael Bloomberg was in these debates, and there was one debate where Elizabeth Warren just ripped him for his wealth, and she was really pressing it on him, and he was defending himself, and he said, "I've worked very hard for my money. I worked hard for my money." Now, he may have worked hard. I don't deny he worked amazing, but I'm not quite certain he's worked no harder than the janitor who's sweeping up the factories and the warehouses that he owns, and he's working no harder than all the other people. You cannot, no one's labor is worth $1 billion. You cannot earn $1 billion. You can hoard $1 billion. You can cheat your way to $1 billion. You can lie away to $1 billion. You can't earn $1 billion.
True.
And we saw that even in Michael Bloomberg, because after his campaign was over, he had hired all of these staff, promising them that they would be paid through November. And once he ended his campaign, he cut their payoff. Yeah, that's how you get your $1 billion, Michael Bloomberg, is you make these promises to people, you milk them for everything they have, and then you screw them.
Well,
That's how you earn $1 billion.
Yeah. Well,
He demonstrated it for us right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm wondering, too, because like you said, with that kind of money and how people get it, anything like that, clearly we're not in great shape at the moment, with the pandemic, let alone just everything going on as a whole. Do you see the economy as being salvageable? Like when let's say you become president starting November.
No. Joe Biden released a brilliant ad probably about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And it basically quoted President Trump 50 times throughout this ad on different things he said about the economy, and about the pandemic and all these lies that President Trump told and things that were proven to be false. And then at the end, it said something to the effect of, Mr. President, you didn't build a great economy, you destroyed one. Now, that last sentence at the very end of his ad completely ruined his entire ad, because it implied that before the pandemic we had a great economy.
Yeah.
So before the pandemic, last January, yes, we were on an 11-year run of a bull market. Corporate profits were at an all-time high. Unemployment was at an all-time low. There were several indicators that our economy was doing very well. You would think after 11 years of a bull market, if there was any point in history where the U.S. economy would be able to withstand something like a pandemic, it would have been in February and March of 2020. And it took 5 days for our economy to come crumbling down.
Yes.
Demonstrating that the reason we had such these high corporate profits is because most of our employees who are not unemployed, but they were working 2-3 jobs in the gig economy with no health insurance. And so things fell apart in 5 days, which demonstrated we did not have a healthy economy 6 months ago.
Well, that's what drives me nuts.
Yes, the 1%.
That's what drives me nuts too.
Was doing great, but your average worker was not.
When I read all these things about, and this is even prior to any of this, was the whole, well, you should have about 6 months worth of savings in case something happens, this, that, the other thing. And then for months I was reading a lot of people don't even have that $1,000 if something goes wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now that this virus happened and everything shut down, a lot of these major companies, as they say, like grade A companies or whatever, they didn't even last a month, and they're like, oh, we need money, but I'm the scumbag that doesn't have a month, in savings saved. I'm the scumbag, but you're a major corporation and you don't have that? There's something, you need new accountants or something, because I know what you're doing, the numbers. You can't, I'm not that kind of bear.
Yeah, we are actually working on our economic policy, and one of the things I'm looking at is how do we add greater accountability to incorporated entities? Because right now you have people like Donald Trump who can incorporate and they can make literally billions of dollars while driving companies into the ground, leaving their employees unemployed, taking their life savings, and yet they walk away, the Trumps of the world walk away with millions of dollars in profits. You know, we even have now with all these companies going bankrupt, and they're paying their executives 6, 7, 8-figure bonuses to keep them on board through the bankruptcy. So they're laying off hundreds, thousands of workers, and yet the executives are being paid multi-million-dollar contracts to stay with the company. And so this is where one of the things we're looking at as a campaign is what do we need to do to our understanding of what does it mean to be incorporated and what does it mean to be shielded from liability when that shielding allows you to drive companies into the ground, to leave people unemployed, and yet the executives can still profit.
Exactly. There's no consequence with the whole, housing crisis. And then basically it was just all because insurance companies, remember if you're such a big company, all you have to do is tell the government, hey, if we go bankrupt, we're going to take the economy down and just blah, 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 blah. Basically, they do what they do. We all know. We were kids too. We begged for this, begged for that. We knew who to beg and when to beg, and we got it most of the time. We did our little threats, and it's the same thing they did. They got their money. Trickle down never works. Trickle up does. If you give the money to the people, they know how to spend it. They know what they want.
Even the fact that during this pandemic, the top 0.001 of the 1% has made billions and billions of dollars. And there's been articles about how the economy is now decoupled from the stock market. So the stock market can do really well. Right now the stock market's not doing horrible. Our economy is in the pit.
Yes.
And so what we've done is we've taken this casino environment for multi-billionaires, which is what the stock market is in some respects, and we've decoupled that from the actual lives and economic welfare of your every average worker. And so this allows the upper echelons of the 1% to still make their billions literally while people are being unemployed. This is why we've been in this pandemic for 4 months now. There's only been one stimulus check that's gone out to your average taxpayer, of $1,200.
Yeah.
I would love it if Congress would have had their pay severed like most workers did.
They'd find an answer real quick.
For 4 months, like most workers have, we would have had a lot more stimulus for your average taxpayer had Congress actually felt some of the pain that your everyday taxpayer is facing right now because they're unemployed or they're underemployed and their jobs have evaporated and all these other things that are going on.
Yes.
And like they say with Walmart, Walmart is a big one. Well, they'll let their quote-unquote full-time workers work 32 hours a week just so they don't have to pay them health care. And so now they get onto Medicare. So isn't that a corporate bailout? Medicaid, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Isn't that a corporate bailout? It's the same, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it shits like a duck, it's a duck.
Yeah, speaking of Medicaid,
we have to rename what we call stimulus for businesses, which is actually welfare.
Yeah. Corporate welfare.
And we have to communicate that as what it is, and we have to prevent the 1% from enriching themselves off of that type of welfare, which is really what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, like having
prisons. So again, we need to, if corporations need stimulus, need welfare to keep their businesses afloat, then there has to be an absolute limit with a very low ceiling of how much corporate executives can make in those scenarios.
Yes.
Because again, if you need taxpayer money, that money cannot go to pay 6, 7-figure salaries more than the president makes, which he or she only makes $400,000 a year. And yet, through our bailouts of corporations, we are paying the salaries of executives 6 or 7 or 8 figures annually into their bonuses when they're profiting off of these types of things.
Okay, yeah. Now, where you mentioned before just about, again, the money going basically where it really doesn't need to go with that. What would be your feelings on, would you be behind perhaps doing Medicare for all or something like that? Or even for that matter, education is so.
I'm very convinced that healthcare is a right, not a privilege.
Yes.
I pay close attention to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They have not convinced me yet that they know how to pay for it.
Okay.
And I haven't done those numbers myself. So while I agree healthcare is a right, not a privilege, I'm not yet convinced Medicare for all is the way to go.
Okay.
I'm open to that discussion, but I have not been convinced yet that we know how to pay for it. And one of the things I'm advocating, and this is what I've spoken to Bernie Sanders supporters. I've actually got a lot of interest in my campaign after he suspended his campaign. And one of the things I say is, his vision. I love how Bernie is trying to kind of recapture the imagination of the American voter. And I think he's onto something with his Medicare for all and systemic economic inequality focus. The challenge is Bernie does not really understand race and the disparity that race creates in our nation. And so one of the things that I'm adamant about is right now we have foundations that, again, exclude women, exclude natives, and exclude African people specifically, and then exclude other groups implicitly. And so had Bernie Sanders not suspended his campaign, had he won the nomination, and had he somehow managed to beat Donald Trump, get elected, and get Medicare for all passed, had he done that, with the foundations we have today, that again exclude women, exclude natives, and exclude African people, what would have happened is we would have had great health care for white men, and everybody else would have got a hodgepodge. Because we haven't fixed the foundations yet, our country was not built to distribute things evenly. They were built to favor white landowning men. And so we have to fix the foundations first, and then we can have a very robust discussion on, okay, now how do we provide health care for everybody? Now how do we provide the other services that we need so that we can actually distribute these things equally instead of in a way that favors the white landowning male demographic.
And actually, like you said, once they tear down,
again, this is why.
Once they tear down,
this is why I have my first 100 days plan to remove that racism, sexism, white supremacy in the first 100 days, so we can actually start having discussions on things like healthcare and police reform and all the other things we need to do as a nation.
Okay. Well, even from what I'm understanding for some of it, I know this wouldn't be all of it, but from what I understand for some of it, if you wanted to do between Medicare for all or something like that, or even college tuition covered for all too, one or the other, I think not both. The U.S. occupies every country except for, I think, Iran and North Korea. From what I understand, if we pull soldiers out of there, that'll be a lot of money that can go to there. But then, what do the soldiers do? So it's tough. Do you
build bridges?
Yeah, build bridges. That's true
bridges, too. Service roads.
The amount of money that our country spends on military dwarfs not just many other nations, it dwarfs the globe, the amount of money that we spend on our military. And one of the reasons is, and this is, when I talk about foreign policy, one of the nominations I'm most excited to make as president is I want to nominate a Native American as my Secretary of State.
Okay.
Not only to have a Native person in the White House, but have a Native person be the first ambassador to the globe.
Okay.
That would be transformational for our country. One of the things I talk a lot about is this need to create common memory, where we do not have a common memory as a nation. We have a white majority that remembers a mythological history of discovery and expansion. opportunity and exceptionalism. And we have communities of color, women, other marginalized communities that remember a lived history of stolen lands and broken treaties, of slavery and Jim Crow laws, of massacres and boarding schools and internment camps and families separated at the borders and segregation, mass incarceration, and there's no common memory. And that's true not only domestically, it's true internationally. Who are most of our allies? Most of our allies are colonial nations who at one point colonized a good portion of the world. And so I would love to see there be a transformation, not only in the United States and decolonizing our nation here, but in really addressing what it is that we hold, what are the common values we hold with our allies, because right now I would argue most of our common values with our allies are colonial and not actually beneficial for the global community.
Yes.
And so I would love to sit down with the prime ministers of many of our European allies and have long discussions about their histories, not only here in the U.S., where, France, Germany, Britain, the Netherlands, all were colonial nations here in North America at one point or another. In fact, France was the largest landholder here in the U.S. Germany had large holdings of land. The Netherlands had large holdings of land here. The British had large holdings of land here. But they also colonized most of the world. And so these are the conversations. And so by having not only a native president, but a native secretary of state, I think that could begin to transform and bring up some very healthy conversations within the global community, because we would have someone who would have a different memory.
We saw both sides of it.
Our ambassador.
Yeah.
They see both sides of it,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I always would say, like, if you want to balance the budget, always get the proverbial, welfare mother. She has a few kids, through a few different fathers or whatever. But she always had time, in the neighborhood. She was always that mom that always had food. If you were hungry, even if it wasn't your kid, let her balance the budget. None of these guys having the balls to ask for anything stupid.
Yeah, it's not not a white guy who never had to worry about where the money's going to come from.
Yeah, just like, sit down. What? You asked me the money for this? And then just have to sit there and just get berated. I mean, just for, not using your common sense.
What about
If you can't tell me the price of a gallon of milk, don't tell me you can balance the budget.
Okay, yeah. Now, what about our listeners?
And most of our politicians couldn't tell us the price of a gallon of milk.
Yes. Exactly. They don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So how can we expect that they're going to know? So, Oh, yeah. Now, one of our listeners had asked about maybe 5 minutes ago, had sent in a little message on there, because we have, I'm sure you know about this too, there are a lot, again, you said millennials, my generation and a little bit younger, who, it's a lot of people are just, like you've said, wildly in debt. I was going to say between student loans, anything like that. I'm sure I was going to say you're working on an economic plan. Is there anything that is actually even available, anything that's possible that could happen that could help with that?
Well, I mean, right now there's a huge discussion on forgiving college debt. And, there was a very robust debate about that in the Democratic primary. As what are we going to do about our millennials who are drowning in debt? We absolutely need to address that. But that's only half of the challenge we face with our educational system. Because, yes, we have millennials who are drowning in debt, but we have Gen Z, our younger people who are actually in high school and going into college and in junior high and elementary now, and they are bored out of their minds. These are young people who do not know the world without high-speed internet.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be 50 this year, right? And so I grew up on basically my educational system was analog. And, if I had a research paper and it wasn't in my neighbor's Encyclopedia Britannica down the street and it wasn't in the library across town, I was out of luck. That was all I had for research. So I had to trust everything my teacher said, and I had to believe everything that I read, and then I regurgitated that in the test.
And you had a...
Well, the students we have today, they have these smartphones that have access to more information than we had in hundreds of libraries across the country.
Yeah.
And so our students, our young people, are bored because the educational system still operates in an analog
Yeah.
Agreed.
and they are completely digital. You know, as I've traveled the country and I've talked to high schoolers and young college students, and, you know, all of them have some level of high expertise in something they did not learn in school, whether it's making slime or building drones.
Yeah.
They all have a level of expertise of something that they've learned, and not even from reading about it, but from watching videos of
Right.
it. The amount of information that these people are learning from watching videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Amish,
mind-boggling.
I think the Amish do that. They, put all the kids in a classroom. The kids just stare out the window. They're like, well, go. We want to go hunt and go. That's really good. If you want to stay here and read, that's fine too. If you want to go home, go to sleep, that's fine. And then kids seem to, come out pretty good. Or at least, you got to settle into who you are. And you got to be able to.
We need to change our educational system.
Yes.
So that we can actually begin to allow our young people to access and utilize the unbelievable amount of information that's available to them. We have to ensure that we have an open and free internet so they can access this information. And we have to stop requesting that they memorize and regurgitate all of this stuff that's now searchable. Yes, we had to know it 50 years ago, but
But do we really need to know it, though? Like you said, I started working when I was like 13 years old. By the time I was 15, I was holding my own pretty good, I think. But, yeah, and that was just all by design. The whole time I looked out of the window the whole time in school, and, it was so boring. So I agree.
So we need to, most of our brightest minds in school now are bored out.
Right, yeah.
Because school is not challenging them, and there's no other way for them to actually be challenged academically. And so not only do we have to figure out how do we do universities and even high schools and elementary schools in a digital age, but what do we do about, so we have Gen Z now. So millennials went to college, right? And they're like, okay, we're going to go to college, and they went into debt for it. We have Gen Zs looking at and saying, tell me why I have to go to college now. Is it going to be just as frustrating as high school was? Is it going to be just as useless as high school was?
Yeah, well,
why do I need this diploma?
Yeah,
and I can tell you, the moment, the only reason Gen Z is going to high school, not the only reason, one of the main reasons, is because they know they need that diploma to get a job.
Yeah.
And maybe get a good job.
The moment they figure out how to get their jobs without their diplomas,
which they probably could, except of course. But I'd rather, if you were going to,
because they're not going to go.
Yeah, but I'm saying if going to a dentist or a doctor, I would rather have a student from a 70-year-old surgeon, his student, but he's 50 years old. Oh, it's my son. He doesn't even know how to read, but he just knows how to do what I do. Just exactly. You can't.
So you're thinking going back to like apprenticeship.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with what we have now.
Oh my God, yeah.
People able to learn from video, they're learning by watching.
Yes.
They're watching people cook. They're watching people program. They're watching people build drones. They're watching people make slime. They're watching people. It's like apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. They're not memorizing these things. They can search those things. Why do I need to memorize that? I can search it. And so they're going on and they're watching. The Gen Z is the first generation, maybe in a few thousand years, where their ability to read and write is less connected to their success, their ability to be successful, than it was for their parents or grandparents.
Yeah. But it's funny.
Not that reading and writing is obsolete, but for centuries, reading and writing was the most cost-effective, efficient way to record, archive, and transfer.
Yeah, if you think about it,
and that's not
from the
anymore.
history, if you think about it,
the most cost-effective.
From the very first time, like you said, you started going to school, everything that man has ever learned and put on paper or cave walls, up until yesterday or today, okay, you had to take libraries and, as you said, books, and maybe over in London they have a copy of it. Now all that information is in your pocket, literally in your pocket. In your pocket.
Yeah.
in the phone.
But even for Gen Z now, the most cost-effective, efficient way to record, archive, and transmit information is not reading and writing.
Yeah.
It's video.
Well, it's just, but books are just,
It's video.
yeah. So you're a minister, you're a priest, right?
And it's absolutely changing the way that they interact with the world.
Yeah, but
Absolutely changing the way Gen Z interacts with the world, because reading and writing is no longer the most cost-effective and efficient way to record, archive, or transmit information.
Agreed. I mean, it seems it opens up so many more possibilities for everybody if, as long as, again, the world allows you to really get somewhere with that.
And this is where we have to absolutely, fundamentally, not just make our educational system more affordable, but transform it from the ground up. Because it's a whole new ballgame out there than what it was even 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Gen Z gets that, and they're bored out of their minds in high school right now and in college.
so Mark, what do you do for fun though? From what we hear, this is fun for you, so.
So I've been fairly busy recently, with the campaign going on and the book that we published and the work that I've been doing. I have visions of a life where I could actually go back and start playing basketball again. I used to play basketball a lot. I coached basketball years ago. After I got out of college, I played basketball when I was in high school. And I was a coach at basketball, and I used to be my favorite way of exercise. The past probably 2 decades of my life, I have not been able to play near as much as I would like to, and I have vision of getting back to a place in my life where I am able to get that sort of, not just exercise, where I can run or I can walk and I can stay healthy, but get exercise where I can go out and gather with people and play a game of basketball and be in a setting like that. I haven't been able to do that in a number of years, but it's one of the things I really love to do.
One of our
I love hanging out with my kids and being home with family. So I've actually, because of the pandemic, I've been traveling very little now. These past 4 months, I haven't traveled at all.
Okay.
And it's been great to be home with my family and to just be around and have some more family time here at the house.
That's wonderful. Well, one of our listeners wants to know if you can dunk.
No, I can't.
Well, I can answer.
That's okay.
I have a much better outside shot.
Yeah, right, for 3-pointers, right?
Yeah, so they actually developed the 3-point line when I was in high school.
Really?
And so we just right the time I was in high school is when they came out with the 3-point line. And so all the years of when I would just play rec ball and in college, and then when I was coaching my younger adult years, so the 3-point line was still a bit newer then, and so it was fun to add that repertoire into my game. But I have a fairly decent outside shot.
All right.
I can't dunk though. That's not my game.
That's okay. That's okay. Oh, one thing I'm wondering too, because it's now I know because I'm in the process of reading your book. You also work as a minister, yes?
I was the pastor of a church in Denver for 2 years in the early 2000s. It was called the Christian Indian Center.
Okay.
And I have since that those 2 years, I've done a lot of teaching in seminaries. I've done a lot of work within churches. I'm not ordained, but I have served as a pastor, and I teach in seminaries, and I instruct in theological settings on a fairly regular basis.
Okay.
I see a good commercial for you. It was going to be my Nike one, but not mine one. But it's the whole, how it's just do it. It's just like, are you playing? Show like Larry Zonga getting, knocking somebody over. Show LT hitting somebody, and then show some guy in a suit putting his Nikes on and says, I ain't playing. And then just that, I'm not playing. Like I didn't come here to play. This is business. So it's like Mark Charles, I didn't come to play, and then boom, he just nails it.
Now, I'm wondering.
I answered a question in a live stream the other day. Someone asked me if I was ever going to wear a suit because I have not worn a suit probably in about 20 years since my marriage maybe is the last time I wore a suit.
Okay.
And so they asked me, are you ever going to wear a suit as president? I said no.
Why not? Why no suit?
I have no intention of wearing a suit. Well, two reasons. First of all, I live right now in Washington D.C. and we're in global warming, and so wearing a three-piece suit most of the year makes no sense, right? I mean, if the temperatures are going up, wearing a suit just is not contextual. It doesn't make sense, and I'm convinced that if our lawmakers were forced to go to work without air conditioning, not only would they get rid of their suits, but we would pass environmental legislation in a couple of days if they actually had to experience the weather that's outside of them. So that's one. So I'm not going to wear a suit for that reason. The other reason is if you look back over the history of our country, where the goal of the churches and the nations was to kill the Indian to save the man, to civilize the savages. And you will see pictures of young Native students going into the boarding school dressed as your typical savage Indian. And then you will see an after picture of them graduating from the boarding school with their hair shaved, they're wearing a suit, and they've now been civilized. Yeah. And I'm just like, I refuse to give my nation the satisfaction. And so the country, if I'm elected president, will have to get used to the fact that we have a president who will not wear a suit. I'm going to dress in my traditional clothing all the time. I will probably wear the regalia and traditional clothes for more formal events. Okay. But during the day, I will dress fairly casually. That's the way I've dressed for the past 20 years. And I've decolonized my wardrobe, and I have no intention of colonizing it just so I can be president.
Yeah.
Okay.
When somebody asks you, why don't you wear a suit? Don't worry about what I do. Worry about what you do. Don't you got work to do? I do, so get out of my way. I got stuff to do.
There you go. Well, like you were mentioning before, too, like with climate change, I imagine that your White House would actually be on board with trying to do something about it.
Yeah, so one of the things about both the Democrats and the Republicans right now is they both center the economy.
Yes.
So we have the Republican Party that is bragging that they've built the most robust economy. Of course, this was 4 months ago. Our world's ever seen. And they've done it while trashing the economy, while trashing the environment. They lowered environmental protection laws, and they just completely trashed the environment. Meanwhile, you have the Democrats who are saying we can save the environment and have a robust economy. The Green New Deal is about how we can have a robust economy while we save the environment. And for myself, there's this one, I heard a story of this one tribe, and it was actually in a documentary about the Athabascan people. And the Athabascan people, they live up near the Arctic Circle in Alaska, and they're along the migratory route of the caribou. And every year the caribou migrate north in the winter or in the spring to go and calf. And then in the fall they migrate south to go into warmer climate for the winter. And the leader of this people was talking on this show, and he said, the Athabascan creation story tells us that there's a piece of the caribou in the Athabascan's heart, and there's a piece of the Athabascan's heart in the caribou. So they have a relationship that they're dependent on each other. And he said, no matter how hard the winter was, no matter if we're in a drought, if we're in famine, even if we're starving, we will never hunt the caribou when they head north. And they haven't calved yet. Because if we hunt them when they're heading north before they've calved, we will eat well for a few years, but eventually we'll destroy the population of the caribou. And it will be to our own detriment that we're feasting. And so we never hunt the caribou when they head north. But we do hunt them freely when they go south, because we need their fur for our clothes, we need their meat for our substance. And so, but they have this understanding. Now, Western culture, in general, and America specifically, has been hunting the caribou as they've headed north for hundreds of years.
Yes.
And our environment is at a tipping point. And so right now, the Republicans are trashing the environment to have a robust economy, and the Democrats are saying we can have a robust economy even while we save the environment. And I'm going to tell the American people, I cannot make you a promise about that we're going to have a prosperous economy while we try to save the environment. I can't do that. We actually may have to make some very difficult choices and have some real sacrifice if we're going to bring the globe back from the tipping point that we're at. And so my administration is going to work to decenter the economy and even decouple it from the environment and say, this is such a crisis that we need to take drastic action, and we may need to make some difficult choices corporately, communally, not leaving people behind, but making corporate decisions to exist with less so that we can save the environment. And the great thing is Gen Z gets this. So if millennials know they've been screwed economically and they're passive aggressively trying to fix it, Gen Z knows they're being screwed environmentally. But they're not doing it passive aggressive. They're like, oh, hell no. And so they have been, cleaning up the plastic islands. They organized just 6 months ago or 12 months ago a global climate strike, right? They organized a global climate strike, the Gen Zs did. Now, this shows you their mindset. When you have a strike, when you go on strike, what you are doing is you are forgoing your current prosperity so that you can have longer-term subsistence, right? If you go on strike, you give up your current week's pay or month's pay so that you can have a better contract for the years ahead moving forward. This is what Gen Z understands. We may have to give up some of our current prosperity so that we can have a sustainable relationship with the environment for centuries moving forward. And so I'm actually hoping that Gen Z will get on board with me and help me convince millennials, Gen X, and boomers that, we can't promise a prosperous economy while we try to bring the environment back from the tipping point where it's at right now.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely going to go against, like you mentioned, again, you mentioned in your book, and I've been hearing it more and more places too, the general feeling of American exceptionalism, that we're the best of the best, we have the best everything. I'm thinking that's going to be a rather difficult fight.
Yes, well, American exceptionalism, I would refer to it, and actually in the book I wrote, you're talking about the book On Southern Truth, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery.
Yes. Thank you.
And in that, I actually refer to American exceptionalism as the coping mechanism of a nation that's in deep denial of its genocidal history and its current racist reality. So when you look at things in our history like manifest destiny, which is the belief that we have God's permission to rule this nation from sea to shining sea, that notion of a manifest destiny comes from this belief that Europeans and now Americans have a special relationship with the God of Abraham, and that we have promised lands, much like Old Testament Israel had promised lands. And if you read the Bible, especially the books of Deuteronomy and Joshua, you'll find that when God told his people, the Israelites, to take their promised lands, the way they were to do that was to commit genocide, to kill the Canaanites, the pagans who lived in their promised land. So this is where, if you study our history, and our book goes into this history very extensively, it is absolutely not just brutal with the enslavement of African people, it is horrific with the genocide of native peoples. And Abraham Lincoln was one of the most genocidal presidents in the history of the United States, literally ethnically cleansing the states of Minnesota, Colorado, and New Mexico of native peoples to make way for the Transcontinental Railway. Literally. And yet we celebrate him as our greatest president. Again, this goes back to our notion of we are exceptional. We have a special relationship with God. We have his permission. These are our promised lands. Now, we have to believe that as a nation. The nation, this is why I say it's a coping mechanism. Because if we are not exceptional, if we do not have a special relationship with the God of Abraham, if we do not have promised lands, then we are literally no better than Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why American exception, this is why our infrastructure is crumbling. This is why race relations are in the dumps. This is why we have economic inequality and we have a faltering economy and a toppling environmental crisis. And yet Americans are still insisting we're exceptional.
Yeah.
And it's because, again, if we're not exceptional, then we're merely just another genocidal colonial nation, and our country doesn't know how to wrestle with something like that. This is why my campaign is trying to create this common memory. This is why one of the key planks of my platform is I'm convinced our nation needs a national dialogue on race, gender, and class. A conversation I would put on par with the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that happened in South Africa and Rwanda and in Canada. I wouldn't call ours reconciliation, though, because, again, that implies there was a previous harmony, which is not true. I would call ours conciliation, truth and conciliation, because conciliation is merely the mediation of a dispute. So if reconciliation perpetuates the myth, we used to be great, now we're not. Conciliation demands we have a much more honest starting point. This thing began as a mess. We're just trying to make it better. And there are so many things our nation does not know how to talk about. So much of our history we don't know how to grapple with. There are so many things we've ignored, we've written out of our minds, we've written out of our history books because we just don't know what to do with them. And this is where I'm saying, as our president, as a candidate for president, that not only do we have to deal with them, we have to learn how to heal from them. We have to learn how to wrestle with them and how to find a way to move forward from there, not by ignoring it, but by dealing with it.
When you
and this is why the creation of a common memory is going to be so crucial to that.
And whenever I try to answer a question or whatever, or make a decision, I always say if it's coming from a pure place of love, just whatever's best for that love, the best way I could love that situation, that's usually your answer, you know. And like they say it here, I read somewhere, I heard somewhere the other day, like homeless children. I'm like, we're a really good country, but like, we do have our problems. But how do we let this happen? Those two words actually sat next to each other. Homeless children. How does that happen? I don't have the answers, but I know I can't have that either. And these guys had 50 years in who has a job for 50 years? Mm-hmm. Who? Oh, yeah. Unless you're entrenched in it, in that, you know, same old shit is regurgitated. It's lower, but just, hey, keep your head down. Keep cobbling. Keep okay. Don't look up. Don't ask questions.
Well, it's like you were saying like a couple of minutes ago about how it's a way of dealing with mostly white Americans coming to terms with our history of genocide. Actually, even our current genocide, for that matter. The number of, and it's always countries and populations that don't have nuclear weapons, and they're pretty much always they're brown. That's how it is. So we can kill them. That's okay. And even for that matter, police brutality. It's okay with that too. Do you think, let's go simple just for within the U.S. We're of course 100% behind the protesters for going against police brutality. Do you think it would be possible to actually retrain police, or do you think we just have to scrap the whole thing and start over?
Well, this is where I'm saying my my plan for reforming our criminal justice system, reforming our policing system, begins with abolishing slavery.
Yes.
We have to deinstitutionalize white supremacy and remove the constitutional protection for slavery. And until we do that, any reforms we make to either of these systems are merely going to be cosmetic. And so, there's some discussion about defunding the police, which is different from what it sounds. It's about rethinking the entire way we do policing. Now, we need to do that, but again, we can't do that unless we first abolish slavery. And so this is where I'm very different from both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, because while the two of them are able to, or at least agreeing to at some level, to talk about reforming our policing system, neither of them, and in fact, I'm quite certain even with the third-party candidates, I'm the only one who's openly advocating that we have to abolish slavery. And so, again, this is where the African-American community hears that, and they're like, yeah, they know that's the problem. They've been aware of this for years and years and years. But it's the white landowning male demographic who doesn't fully get that. And so this is why that's not even entering into their minds as part of the solution or what we need to do to move forward. And so, so this past month has given me numerous opportunities to draw some very clear distinctions between myself, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, and actually begin to show how they are more similar than dissimilar.
Yes.
One is more explicit, the other is more implicit, but they both are generally advocating for the same things. One's just a little bit of a nicer person.
Or at least puts on the show to be a nicer person, yes? We're working now, like you said, about how you've been getting your message out more, which is, I think, it's one thing that Tim and I've talked about before too, with as horrifying as it is to have at the very least, a Nazi sympathizer, if not a full-blown neo-Nazi, as president at this point. We feel that him being in office has been partly a catalyst for people realizing and then standing up and protesting in the middle of a deadly virus outbreak to actually go and fight, like I could say police violence, but like you said, need to start with getting rid of slavery first. What can we do? What can any listener, and of course we're gonna keep reposting this so a lot of people can listen to it. How can we help the Mark Charles? And our listeners, the Mark Charles campaign. So
I'm encouraging people to watch my announcement video. If you go to my website, which is markcharles2020.com,
okay.
a year ago, 13 months ago, we announced our campaign. We had a 9-minute video where we laid out our vision for building a nation where we the people truly means all the people. And to this day, it is probably one of the best tools our campaign has to get our message out. While the Republicans are putting forward a very divisive candidate and the Democrats are putting forward a very mediocre candidate, our call for common memory and building a healthier community and our vision for building a nation where we the people truly means all the people absolutely stands out in stark contrast to both of them. And so I'm encouraging people to go to our website, watch our video, and then join our campaign. You can sign up to volunteer. You can donate to us. We are working hard to get on the ballot in as many states as we can. Because of the pandemic, we're not able to collect signatures. While both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are kind of pressing the limits of opening up their campaigns and doing public in-person campaigning right now. Again, what explicit versus implicit, right? Donald Trump is having groups of hundreds and thousands of people at rallies with no social distancing and no face masks. And Joe Biden is having safer events, but he's still having public events. He's still going out and gathering. And I would say voting is essential. And we have to do that. We have to find a way to make voting as safe as possible, including absentee voting. In-person public campaigning is not essential. We live in the 21st century. We have an internet. We have smartphones. We have computers. We have television, radio, newspapers. Politicians most certainly can find safer and more creative ways to campaign in the midst of a global pandemic than gathering crowds and having public events. And so our campaign does not have any public events on our calendar. We haven't held a public event since early March. And we are the only candidate, or we're of the two major candidates and ourselves, we are not planning to hold public events right now. And so this has meant we're not able to collect signatures in a lot of states.
Yeah.
And so our strategy is switching not only from being able to be on the ballot, and we're hoping to be on the ballot in about maybe 10 to 12 states, and then we will be a write-in candidate in about 32 states.
Okay.
There's about 7 states. We will not be able to have any option to vote for us in about 7 states, but there's 40 to 44 states where we will either hopefully be on the ballot or we will be able to be a write-in candidate in those states, which still gives us access to over 500 electoral college votes, which means we are still very much a viable candidate in this campaign. And so we are encouraging people, do not believe the lie of the two-party system. Don't believe there's only 2 choices this year. And if people actually vote for what candidate has the most vision and has the best call for unity, which we believe is myself and our campaign for all the people, we can absolutely win this campaign. I'm not running this as a protest campaign. I'm running this because I truly believe I am the best person and the most qualified to be president.
I truly believe that too.
Yes.
I absolutely believe that.
And our listeners are definitely liking you too.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's that, you know what, I know how the two-party system works. You know what, I don't even care about the two-party system at this point. We're talking about who's better, Trump, Biden, or Mark Charles. I don't give a shit if he's button number 1, 2, 3, 8, or 10. Mark Charles gets my vote. He's that guy that, we're fucking square holes tucked at the red or round pegs, We don't listen to a two-party system. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what I can vote for. Don't tell me I'm not black enough. Don't tell me I'm not fucking tired enough. Don't tell me to go home. I'm gonna vote for who I want to.
Oh, yeah.
What's gonna, Mark Charles, I know what these other 2 assholes are for. I know what Mark Charles is for. So you know what? He got, worst comes to worst, what could possibly, do you think an American Indian as president of the United States, what's the worst thing you think can happen?
It's true.
For him, it's the worst thing that can happen. There's going to be a lot of people not liking that. So, but, what's it? Come on.
Yeah, I am very excited about the potential we have as our campaign right now is gaining more momentum. We're not getting a lot of press, and that's not surprising. We do not expect the press to cover us because of how committed they are to the two-party system, but we are gaining a lot of momentum online. We're getting a lot of momentum on social media, and I think we can absolutely become a part of the dialogue in this election. And again, I don't need people to vote for me today. They don't have to vote for me right now. I need them to vote for me on November 3rd. So I still have 4 months to convince people that I'm the best candidate and I'm most deserving of
hands down. What about maybe Jesse Ventura for VP? You a fan of Jesse?
We have not been looking at him very closely. We do have several other people in mind. I'm not going to go into names right now, but we have several other people that we're vetting.
You like Jesse Ventura, right?
And different options. And I have not followed him very closely as a candidate.
Okay.
No, I mean, I don't think he is a candidate, but
I've heard some good things about him, but I have not followed him very closely, and I know.
But I think he's a candidate.
Yeah, so I do not know much about where he would stand.
Yeah, it's just one of those things because when he became governor, it was because, and again, I have a friend of mine, actually was my boss for a long time, grew up in Minnesota, and he had said it was the funniest thing because when it was the whole seasoned politician, both terrible people. Jesse Ventura comes in like, yeah, I'm a pro wrestler. And he was like the greatest, they, just to say a big F you, they voted for him. So don't tell me it can't work. It has worked.
Yeah.
And it's worked for the better because once they did the annual budgets, and they said, hey, we have a surplus. It was like, well, we can spend it there. We can spend it there. Jesse Ventura said, no, send it back to them. Yeah. Give money to people the money back. They know how to spend it.
Well, it's another success story of the third party.
Of the third party, right. That's what I'm saying. And that all these he's a guy that's does what he says. You think, what are you going to, what's he going to get out of this?
Yeah. I mean, first off, I know I've got to say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This story is definitely inspiring. I will agree with that. It's definitely inspiring.
Oh,
Yeah, and what I'm saying, inspiring and proof that no matter what people say about the third party, blow your conscience. Look, you know that everyone asks questions of like, hey, do you think? All they need to do is hear what their conscience. If you listen very quietly at night when it's still the night, nothing else, you can hear your ancestors whispering in your ear. They're there all the time telling you, hey, don't hold on, wait 1 second. Boom, it would have killed you. They kind of got your back, but you got to listen to them.
Yeah. Oh, well, something
when people challenge me on running as we're going to be a writing candidate in probably over 30 states. Okay. And there's actually a senator from Alaska in the past few years who won her seat in Alaska as senator as a writing candidate.
There you go.
That's wonderful.
And so, again, there's that hope now. And the other thing is, if I become elected, I will be the first native man elected president. Now, people give me pushback for being independent. Well, you know what? Our first white president was also an independent.
Yeah.
There were no political parties when George Washington became president. So our first white president was an independent. So there's no reason our first native president can't also be an independent.
Hey, Mark, I know something has to change because, with everything going on with, a valid third option of Mark Charles is not even an option at this point. He goes to the top of the list because we know what the other two have accomplished, and it's not much.
Yeah.
And everything.
Or too much of not good things.
Everyone knows that this Mark Charles is the right answer. Yeah. Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever we can do to help you out.
Yeah. And seriously,
thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for taking time to have me on today.
And thank you for joining us. And seriously, thank you for running. It was seeming to get really, really hopeless. Like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. That this is a sinking ship. Just make your peace, and that's the way it's going. It is wonderful to actually get to speak with somebody who actually clearly has the best interest of the way you put it, all the people in mind. Thank you, Mark Charles.
Yes, thank you, Mark. It's been a delight. And
you're welcome.
I'm not going to play basketball with you, but I'll arm wrestle you. But you can't win. You can't make me.
But thank you, Mark.
All right.
Thank you again.
Well, thank you. Have a great day. I'll say Hakonat, which doesn't mean goodbye. It means we'll see you again soon.
Yes, we'll talk again soon.
So,
and how do we say thank you in Navajo?
You would say ahyaha.
Ahyaha. Ahyaha.
Ahyaha. Yeah. Ahyaha. It's yeah.
All right. Well, everybody go to marshall.com. Well, it should be .com.
Yes. .com. Yeah. MarkCharles2020.com.
Log on to Netscape.
Is our website. And
absolutely. Make donations and petitions.
I bought a T-shirt.
All right.
Yep.
I need to get one too.
Oh, fantastic. I just got a T-shirt in the mail today, too, from our campaign. I was very glad to get that in the mail.
Yeah, actually, I think I did buy two. I don't know.
Well, this is wonderful. Ahyaha, Mark Charles. And we'll speak soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Charles. President Charles. It was awesome. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
all right.
That was mad cool.
That was mad cool. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We tried to get some of your questions in, but it's really hard because we're back to doing the... Thank you.
We're glad you all enjoyed it. And now you know how to support Mark, and this will be good.
Yes.
In addition to write-ins. We're definitely writing him in here if he's not on the ballot.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we follow him on Twitter and...
that's okay.
No.
You can share it
little,
Yeah, you can share it now.
So that's why I think that I don't know. It could have been.
But good stuff.
Either way.
So excited.
So he'll come on again. I have that feeling.
So. That was so wildly inspiring.
It was, but I hope, by the time he calls in next time that we have that stuff set up.
That'd be cool because we have this whole we got a Xenix 302 USB box mixer and it didn't work. I just say that's right. Too bad he can't dunk. That's okay. He can always practice.
See, there's an honest guy that says he can't dunk. There's an honest guy.
It is. It's true. It's true. Oh yeah, we're not sure what the deal is with the mixer.
Because when Jolynn called into me, it's the microphone. Or is it the, no, I can't hear. You can't hear me.
We can't hear when people call in. Like the microphone works and everybody can hear us, but when somebody calls in, we can't hear the caller. But whoever's listening can hear the caller. Just not us. So we're not sure what the deal is.
Yeah, but B&H opens up on the 3rd, so we're going to go back then. And
it's true.
Hopefully next time he calls in, we'll have a better setup.
Oh, yeah. That would be good.
You know some dude.
Yeah. Mad cool.
I don't want to arm wrestle him still.
You still don't? You don't want to?
I don't. I want to definitely make sure he's present in the house.
There you go. And yeah, there's a headphone jack. We've got the headphone jack plugged in.
Yes.
And we can hear it well, just not when somebody calls in. So we're not sure what the deal is.
On the box.
And there's
and then there's one on the PC too.
Yeah, and
but we're running Linux.
Yeah, we are. But even
when we do it in Windows too, though.
Yeah, when we switch it over to Windows, we still can't hear it either. Maybe a loopback feature, and we were thinking that maybe it's a driver issue, but there doesn't seem to be a driver for the Xenix 302.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're getting new internet tomorrow.
Yep, we are.
So
superior internet. So
superior.
That'll be good.
See, that's something like Mark was saying. Why can't internet be free? Like
true.
in the United States. You don't think we figured that shit out?
Actually, you know what's funny is we're the only place that internet is so expensive. Literally the only place. All around Europe, you can get internet service, actually good internet service, a lot of it better than ours, and it's cheap. Here, it's a capitalist mindset.
No, it's not. It's what it wants to be, but if it starts losing money, we only have money for 30 days.
Yeah.
All these people will be laid off.
Free internet means censorship. You think so? You think it would mean censorship?
I think it might. Well, it already kind of does. Russia has their own internet.
Touché. Good point.
Actually, the drug cartels have their own internet and cellular service.
It's true.
So
it's true. So okay, I could see what you're saying. But yeah, I don't know. But either way, just feeling so inspired by that. Everything should be in that box. Yeah, we got everything.
Yeah, no, we got it. It was only there wasn't many pieces at all, but
yeah,
I do some more homework on it because it's Linux and I think it's more of a Mac thing. And then we just tried because we dual boot if we have to.
Okay. So. And Ralph is anti-government. You think as a whole, are you thinking like anarchist or what style of anti-government? Because of course anarchist means a whole bunch of different things. Nope, we're not using Chrome.
No, Firefox.
Yeah, Firefox on Linux, and even we can switch.
Well, I downloaded Chrome, so I was going to install that.
Ralph is in a cult. Well, that's not easy.
I'm in a cult.
You're in a cult?
Nonsense Password.
Oh yeah, that's true. We're in your cult, Nonsense Password. That's true. Boku Yummy Yum Hog. Yes, we are all in that cult.
We all vote for more Charles.
And we rule. Yes.
And we all vote for more Charles.
Absolutely. We all vote for Mark Charles because clearly he is a superior candidate. He's a better candidate.
I spoke too much meat to calm me down.
Yeah.
So I started talking about something and filibustering, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot where I was going with this. No, like I looked at you like,
Thanks for joining us. How about chilling?
I really did. Yeah, he's coming back. We don't know when. I mean, I hope he's coming back.
Yeah, we hope so because he's just awesome.
Yeah, we gotta share. Maybe if you wanted, we could do a time where you could call in and
everybody could call in.
Everybody, well, we could just share it with everything and.
Oh, plus another thing we're going to do, of course, once we're done here, we will repost it and publish it up on Podbean. But then what we're going to do is we're going to download it and going to put it up on YouTube as well. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Nonsense. But yeah.
Oh, Nonsense. Such a panty teaser.
Sally's here?
Oh, that whore.
Well, Nonsense, you just called in Sally. How about that? No. Thank you, Nonsense. Thank you.
Oh. Congrats, guys. I say that a lot.
You do. That's right, Sally. But yeah, we'll put this up on YouTube. That way more people can see it too.
Yes.
Oh yes, she is voting for Mark Charles in different ways, I'm sure. She's into Navajo guys.
The guys.
Yeah, into guys as a whole, that's true.
Guys and fashion. And fashion.
Yes, she is. Oh my! Yeah. But that was so awesome.
He's an awesome dude.
He is, and I'm so excited now. It just feels things don't feel.
Thank you, Substance.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Thank you.
We know though. It's like even like when I'm like, oh come on, he's either Mark. I'm sorry. It was Tulsi I like Mayor Pete, and I like Bernie. Bernie, it's kind of weird, but Tulsi, she just has the good ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then once, I'm like, all right, one of them was, and then Biden, who has a job for 47 years and then asks for a fucking raise and a promotion, that fucked shit up this bad.
Yeah.
Like, where do you fucking get off?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
47 fucking years. Who has a job for 47 years?
The crime bill.
Who the fuck has a job for 47 years? Are you fucking kidding? 47 years. And you're proud of it. Yeah. And you're proud of the accomplishments? Where's your fucking baseline? And being a piece of shit? Yeah, that's your fucking baseline? You're proud of 50 fucking years?
Career politician.
50 fucking years, and now you want to run shit?
Yep.
Get the fuck out of here. Mark Charles is fucking...
That's right.
Mark Charles is too good of a candidate. He would, actually try to find the love. Mr. Biden, blah, 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 be diplomat, I think.
Maybe, but
maybe not. You know what?
Well, it's also.
That's why I don't think. I didn't think Mark was going to ask me to be vice president. Like, good. I think he knew I couldn't take it.
Yeah, I was going to say, please don't be vice president.
I'm so not qualified.
Well, no, it's even like you said, Ralph, career politicians. Well, it's something I'm appreciating how Mark had said too. I'd said to him about how are you going to deal with, again, you've got these mostly white men who like the way things are. How are you going to deal with that? And like he said, we're not even bothering because I'm not going to win them over. He's got my generation and he's got the next generation younger. Because we don't want things to be the way they were.
Right. I agree with that. Because even my generation is just like, oh, you're a wasted vote. I'm like, I didn't vote for it. I voted in 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Exactly.
Look what happened. Exactly. I didn't vote for it for years. So look what. This is on me, guys. And I'm not running for us.
You're responsible.
Somehow I'm responsible for all this fucking shit we're in.
Oh my! But just so excited to be voting for Mark Charles. Exactly.
Well, you did. I know. Who put me in charge? I told you. They won.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
All 3 kids.
But seriously, guys, thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for love and thanks for sharing that with us. And
absolutely.
Here's to many more. And. We're going to post this up now. Remember, Mark Charles 2020.
Yes, MarkCharles2020.com.
There's like a deal.
Awesome.
There's one for you.
Well, yeah, you can buy some gear from him. You can donate. You can volunteer with them. Oh, so
follow them on Twitter.
There are petitions on there that you can sign.
Follow them on Twitter and open your wallet. $10. Like you need $5. I need $5. That's true. I hate asking people for money, but
and on Twitter, let me think. What his Twitter handle is. It's not Mark Charles. If you look up Mark Charles, you'll find it.
Mark Charles 2020.
Yeah, if you look up Mark Charles, but it's oh yeah, it's. I know I follow him on Twitter. It's yeah, hi Kitty. We'll find it. It's not his name for Twitter. Hi Kitty.
Maybe Nonsense has it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Nonsense has it. Nonsense might have it. Maybe. It's Hogan something, I think.
No, I think no. Hold on.
Wireless
Hogan.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm gonna put this. This is Mark Charles' Twitter handle, and you can follow him. I'm pretty sure on Facebook too.
And buy his book. His book is a good read.
Yeah, his book is a good read. It's Unsettling Truths. That's the title of it. You go to the website. You can easily find a link there to purchase it. It's been a very eye-opening read. Like I talked to Tim about this before too. Yeah, okay. We're both white. We realize that. It's of course we go really into the background where thank you. You go really into our ancestry. We're both like 200,000 years ago. We have African ancestors, like pretty much all of us do. But it's just realizing reading it how little I actually knew.
Yeah.
So seriously, thank you everybody for joining us, and of course we'll catch you all tomorrow.
Yes.
And have a good
Nonsense will probably pop in there in a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. But everybody, stay safe, stay healthy out there. We appreciate you giving us your time.
Let's get some shit done. Let's fucking put some fucking square fucking pegs in some round holes. Hit button number 3.
Sounds like a plan, baby.
Biden and Trump who kiss my ass. Mark Charles 2020.
Thank you. You too, Nonsense.
Yes.
You too. But we'll catch Nonsense.